Obrigada, Ana Paula. Obrigada, Zoe, pela leitura.
Thank you, Ana Paula. Thank you, Zoe, for the reading. And I would like to thank you again for coming and for having this fantastic book and for the opportunity so we can talk about this. It's a short book and it's a very clear translation. It's really nice to hear both of them. I would like to start by asking two questions. And I'll ask you two questions. One, for the first one for Ana Paula and Zoe, and then for you to answer. So actually, it's two questions for each. Ana Paula, I would like you to, first of all, to tell me where did this idea come from, the idea for the book, and also if you could talk about the research that you had to do, if you did have to do a lot of research to write this book. And also, Zoe, I'd like to ask you, how did you come up with this opportunity of translating this book, Ana Paula's book, and also what were the challenges of translation, and also the challenges and the research? Thank you. These are the for the two questions. The idea for writing this book comes comes back there because it started before the writing, because I have a book that is called Entre Rinhas de Cachorros e Porcos Abatidos. That, and this book brings Edgar Wilson as a pig slaughterer. And this was published in Brazil in 2009, if I recall, maybe 2007. I don't remember very well, but this book comes previously from this book, and had already known and started learning about this slaughtering idea. And my relationship was with the pigs, I would say. And Of Cattle and Men came after a book called Animal Charcoal, which is my trilogy, the Brute Saga. And so I have three novels, The Dirty Work of Others, and the protagonist is Erasmo Wagner from this thing that we just read. So I write about this universe, and all the stories and the characters, they cross each other, they meet each other. So if you start reading all the books, you understand that the characters end up meeting each other. So Erasmo Wagner works as a garbage man. And this is a very difficult word, very hard job here in Brazil. And the third book that concludes this trilogy is The Animal Charcoal, which is the story of a fireman who has a brother who works in the crematorium of this small city. And then we have Of Cattle and Men that comes right after this one. And then I started talking about cattle and bringing all this universe that I had already built with the other books. So here you're gonna see Erasmo Wagner that has this story. He was arrested for a murder that he perpetrated. So this unfolds in this trilogy, the Brute Saga. So my stories are connected, and I revisit the stories and the characters and the books. Of Cattle and Men specifically comes from my visits to the butchers. Yes, my everyday life. And then I started noticing how people started to buy so much meat. And I would stop at the line in the supermarket and the butchers, and I would just notice how much meat one person alone would buy. And with this habit that I had after 1 or 2 years, I started living by myself, starting to go do my groceries, and I started to get closer to this dead meat in the butchers. And I started to feel the impact of the smell and of the place. It would be used. I usually see the meat packers unloading their trucks, and I would see a full leg of a cow. And this way I started to try to understand our relationship of eating meat and how we how we feed from this big animal that we see alive, and then we kill it, and then we eat it. So if we eat this blood and meat, aren't we a little bit of this animal and this continuous cycle? And this is how we see of cattle and men.
It came from this idea of the hogs, of the pigs that had been slaughtered, and then it gets into the slaughterhouse of the cattle. And that's where I started going through with this universe. So I started my research. I had to get into the slaughterhouse. I had to understand how the production works, how they work. And this is how my work um, functions. I needed to understand it all. How do you get to that to that steer? How do you kill it? What is the whole process of slaughtering it? And in Brazil, as we produce a lot of meat, we export a lot of meat. So in Brazil, you can see this reality. I live in Paraná, in southern Brazil. There is a region here in Mato Grosso do Sul where a great deal of meat is produced, in Rio Grande do Sul also. So here in this region where I am, we are a place where a lot of meat is produced. I had to dive into this world. This was necessary. I had to eat meat again. I had already quit eating meat a long time before writing the book, but the research requested that from me. I really needed to eat meat again in order to research for this book. Afterwards, I stopped eating meat again, but it was really, I felt the need to research a lot, to go technically into the process of slaughtering, to understand how that works in Brazil. Of course, the slaughterhouse pictured in the book is not very modern. Nowadays, you would see slaughterhouses that are a lot more modern. And even back then, when I wrote the book, there were other slaughterhouses that were a lot more modern. It didn't have all this. I went back to the rougher methodology of slaughtering with the mallet, but it was a very thorough research of the process to understand how all of that works, and only then I could write the story.